Hey, welcome. If it's your first time, it's also my first time here too. So I've been trying to do this video for a bajillion and 10 times, and every time I do it, I just get so frustrated. I have to delete the whole thing, and then I never post it. And then I watch a video, and then I think to myself, oh, God, I really want to do that. I really want to post about all the books I read. And this is where we're at. So I've decided to make this a 2023 wrap up. I know what you're thinking too. Why are you doing a 2023 read when we are at the end of 2024? And that is because that is really when I started reading again in my adult life. So we are gonna go back and look at all the 16 books that I read. So I'm actually not great at this. I keep thinking to myself about how I can explain doing a synopsis without like completely ruining it or forgetting every single character's name and what the whole entire plot of the book was. So I think I'm just gonna do it really briefly and just give you backstory and vibes, I think, about these books. And for my next super famous reads is ACOTAR, A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. And my good God, this book, if other social media platforms have not already spoiled this for you, follows Feyre, who is this meek woman but also super strong. She ends up killing this wolf, which is crazy because she's literally emaciated and the only one fighting for her family to bring anything into this household. She kills a wolf, and this wolf was not just any other wolf. And now she has to be taken into this fairy world by these fae people as a prisoner. That is the best synopsis I can give it. She gets trapped in this fairyland is it. And I did not like this. I finished book 1 and I attempted to finish book 2. I'm still 85% of the way done with book 2, and I almost refuse at this point to finish it. I think you actually should read this book. I think everyone should read this book, mainly because this has the same level of meme-ish content as like Twilight does to me. Like, you will understand so much more about like the book world if you read A Court of Thorn and Roses, because so many references are made to it, especially if you're reading romanticises. It's just kind of hard not to like judge it based off of A Court of Thorn and Roses. I really hated this book because I hated Feyre. I hated her the entire time. From beginning until end, I hated her. I thought that she was like wildly, again, I noticed that a lot of authors do this when they're trying to make a strong female lead. They attempt to make them really angsty and bitter with a chip on their shoulder, except I don't like them or that for that reason. Like, I think that a character that has like a chip on their shoulder is, again, like fine. I think being angsty is fine, but it has to be done well. Like, you just can't have a like passive aggressive or actually aggressive character and not back that up with like other good qualities, because Feyre almost actually has like no redeemable qualities to me, besides maybe like the fact that she like paints, and sloppily at that if we get to the second book. It also really irks me that like she's being represented as this like bland looking human, but if girl bland, why fae like her? If girl not beautiful, why two fae like her? It's not adding up to me. But I gave this book like 2 stars, I think. I think I really read it mainly because Rhysand, his name is Rhysand. I don't care if the author says his name is Rhysand. His name is Rhysand. I'm sticking by that. I will call him that in my head for as long as we live. I only finished the book because of him. That's it. That's all I have to say. So the next book that I read that I also gave 2 stars is Twisted Hate, and this is Anna Huang's 3rd book in her Twisted series, following the main girl character's brother in the first book and her best friend. And they have this like enemies to lovers thing going on right now, except that there's obviously some subplot and backstory behind why issues will arise between them. I did not have a fun time reading this book. I didn't get a lot of romance, quite frankly, and I didn't get a lot of other things. I don't know. I wasn't really digging this book that much. There is a good amount of smut in here if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for spice, here you go. There is one scene in here that made me give this book 2 stars instead of 3, or maybe it was 3 instead of 4. This has an issue in here 75% of the way in that made me rethink the book and how I felt about Josh as a person and him as a character. There's some things I just feel in characters that, like, even if you say sorry, it doesn't really make up for what just happened. You know what I'm saying? So I think I gave this book 3 to 2 stars because compared to the first book, I actually was able to finish this. The first book was so, I don't want to say bad, but there was a lot going on in the first 25% that I just couldn't handle. And so I gave up on it. So because I was able to actually finish this book, I think I gave it a 3 stars. And so we might just stick with that. I'm actually getting really tired doing this. I didn't think that this would take me this long, but it is. So I'm gonna try and wrap this up as quickly as I can, but I don't know how that goes for me because I have no train of thought and I just kind of decided to wing doing this. So the next read was The Hike by Drew McGarry. And this book follows some dude. I can't remember his name for the life of me. But he goes on this business trip and he decides to go on a hike outside of the hotel that is there in his area. And he goes on this hike and he ends up getting wildly lost. And when I mean wildly lost, I mean he gets so lost, he is most likely somewhere in another dimension, in another time zone, in another parallel universe. This is a read for people who probably like Allison in the Wonderland. This is one of those reads. I think that this book actually was written pretty well. It was very trippy, to say the least. There were so many twists and turns and bumps and, you know, revelations that the main character ends up coming up with, and I definitely think it was a pretty fun read. I did only give it 3 stars just because sometimes I felt like it dragged on a little bit, but overall not bad time. Overall maybe 3.5. We have to add that 0.5 in there because if we don't, then it's just a regular read. But this was a little better than a regular read is what I remember. The next book on my list is Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. And this book follows an 18-year-old pregnant delivery girl driver who becomes obsessed with one of the customers she delivers. Her obsession kind of falls between obsession and friendship as she ends up talking to this customer and hanging out with her outside of work hours. I think that this book is what my year of rest and relaxation wanted to be. Whereas in my year of rest and relaxation, I was completely annoyed with the main character all throughout the book and kind of just wanted to shake her. And this one, I was like, I understand why she is wildly dysfunctional. I gave this read 5 stars, and I have no regrets. I shall not be taking it back. I recommend. You would think I'd know better by now than to just pick up a book with like cartoonish looking characters and think I'm gonna have like a dandy time, but I did have a dandy time. So the next book is The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armez. And this was just like a fun read, I think. I gave it 4 stars, honestly. I know you don't want to hear that, but it follows Rosie, and Rosie's having like a rough, tough time or something with her apartment. She ends up going to her best friend's house, who is someplace away, obviously not using her own apartment. And then her best friend's cousin, Lucas, who is from Spain, comes and is like, hey, you told me I could use this place. And Rosie's there like, oh crap, I shouldn't be here. I feel like I could have explained that better. what did I say? This is gonna be very chill synopsis. This is the vibes that I'm getting. But basically, Rosie has also been kind of stalking her bestie's cousin Lucas because he's super duper hot, and now they're going to be kind of roommates together. And Rosie gets to kind of give Lucas a tour guide all throughout the city, and I think I just had like a good time. That's all I have to say. I don't recall much of what happened besides being like, ah, you know, this is one of those movies that probably played out in like the early 2010s somewhere. And I was just having a rockin' old time. Like, I can't blame myself for the things that I like. Remember, this is vibes only. This has nothing to do with like great critiquing literature. Vibes only. I had a good time. 4 stars. The next book in this list is another contemporary romance. I actually do love contemporary romances a lot. Don't get me wrong. I love a think piece. I love something strong. But I don't want serious all the time. My life is already too serious. I promise you, I want a good jolly time. I want to laugh. I want to feel, but like not a lot, like a little bit. So this book is along those sort of fun reads. Forget Me Not involves Alma, who is a wedding planner, and she just got like this super big gig, but the only requirement is that they work with Elliot, who is her ex, and they have to come together to create this super cool, awesome wedding, but then we have to like go back in time and think of why they're not together anymore, and if their connection is still there. So this is definitely a second chance romance, forced proximity kind of thing. I didn't really love this book, honestly. It was kind of lacking for me. I think Elliot was like the strongest character in this book, if we would call it that. And I found that their reasoning for breaking up and even their reasoning for getting back together is also not strong enough for me. The story just fell a little flat in my eyes, and the spicy scenes that are in here, there are, I think, like 2 or 3 of them. I almost think that the author could have just done away with it. I think she could have just taken those out completely, because she wanted these like very beautiful kind of like airy romantic scenes, and I was getting none of that. None of it. There's one bit in here where I was like, now why would you do that there? Why would you do that? That sounds messy. So I think I re-rated this and I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good. I most likely wouldn't recommend this to somebody, but I would tell them that I have it if they wanted to read it. The next book, I'm actually traumatized reading. And it is Earthlings. Yes, this very fun little cover of a book. This book is about a girl named Natsuki, and Natsuki isn't like the other girls. She's from some faraway planet, and that's kind of the only synopsis I'm going to give you, because if you really oh my god, if you really want to read this, do not read this. Don't read it. Like, the cover is not what you think. I promise you it's not. You need to read the trigger warnings on this because, like, what the fuck? This was just not a fun read. I did not have a good time at all. I actually, if we're not talking about this book in terms of, like, what a think piece it could be or is, or I don't know, yada, 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 why did this happen? Why did that happen? But if we're just going solely based off of, like, vibes only, and did I have a good time? Did this change me as a person? No, it didn't change me as a person. I actually hated this book. I hated the characters in this book. I hated everything that happened in this book, quite frankly. I wanted to take back my time in reading this book. And it really sucks because the author has another book called Convenience Store Woman, which I did read previously. And I think that book had kind of the same vibes as this book, but like much more tame, and it did make me think. I actually did think about stuff after reading that. I thought about life and the mundaneness of life, why we should do the things we want to do regardless of people's perception of those things. But this book, I was not having a good time. I would give it 0, but obviously we cannot. So 1 it is. What is next? The next book I read was In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I hope I'm saying that right. And it follows Danny, who is a lawyer somewhere in Manhattan, and things are going pretty well in her life. She's pretty sure that, you know, she's gonna get this promotion at her job. She's gonna marry the guy she's always wanted to marry and get engaged to him. She's gonna have the perfect storyline, basically, until one night Danny goes to bed after this super eventful day, and she has this dream / premonition of someplace 5 years into the future. And it feels so incredibly real that she cannot shake this feeling at all. She goes to see a therapist about it because it's that serious of how real this time felt for her. And the time that she was with this person in this dream was so intense, and she had such a strong feeling about it that she just couldn't shake it. This book started off so good, and I was waiting for it to turn out the way I thought it was going to, and it didn't. And I think I hated it because of that. But I obviously didn't hate it enough, because I think I gave this book somewhere between like 3 and 4 stars. I think it was written really well. I loved it regardless. I'm just kind of pissed at where it went. I almost wanted to rewrite the book for Rebecca and make it into the thing that I thought it was going to be. So yeah, there's that. I did have a good time reading it. I think it was really fast. It was really quick. I think this book was dealing more with like bigger emotions like grief than it was love, and I think that's really what caught me off guard. Is I walked into this thinking that it was going to be a fun romance, and it was not that. On my 2023 wrap up is King of Wrath by Anna Huang, and this is a part of her King of Sins series. This is the first of the book, and I actually read this series before I read the Twisted series, which I think, in all honesty, saved me, because I just think maybe this series is a little tamer for me. This book involves 2 very wealthy people, and Dante, the male counterpart in this wealthy couple, is being blackmailed by Vivian's father into marrying because he wants the prestige of marrying into Dante's family. So now Dante is forced to marry Vivian and be with her, and he doesn't really like the idea of that, because who likes to be blackmailed against them? So he thinks in her head, like, I just have to hate her. She sucks. I'm gonna figure out how to get out of this. And they go through stuff, trials and tribulations. But I did give this book 4 stars. I did. Yeah, I did. I think that I had a good time, and I base a lot of my books off of like, did I have a good time reading them? I did kind of have a good time reading. And I didn't hate the characters very much. I'm sure that there's something controversial, or I liked Vivian enough as like a female lead, and I don't usually like the female leads in romance books. I think a lot of the times they're too like angsty, and like the authors write them a little strange because they want us to think that they're like a strong female lead when they don't need to be that angsty to be a strong female lead. Like, they could still just be a strong female lead. I think that this book wrote Vivian well in that manner. So I give this book 4 stars, you guys. I'm sorry. I don't take it back. Another short read that I did for 2023 was Before the Coffee Gets Cold, and at the time it was really popular on TikTok and Instagram, so I figured why not give it a shot. It is a compilation of short stories that involve a back alley cafe somewhere in Tokyo that lets you go back into the past. Yeah, it has a very cool way of making you transport back into the past, and it's following the fact that there's a ghost that literally sits at one of the cafe tables, and if this ghost gets up to like go to the bathroom or something, you can sit in her place for a short amount of time and go back to the time that you need to go back to. It's so weird. I liked the idea of it, and you have to like drink coffee too. I don't know, it's like a whole ritual, you know? But you follow 4 people who are meaning to go back into the past. And honestly, I can't really remember too much. I can't remember completely all of the stories, but I do remember how the stories made me feel. And I did end up crying, I think, through like 2 of those stories. So I gave it 4 stars for this read. I know this is a series of books. I don't know if I will read the other ones. Maybe it just doesn't speak to me. It doesn't call to me. But I did like that one. I liked it. 4 stars. The next book on my list is a book I actually put down years ago. And it was one of those things that, you know, when you're reading a book and you're kind of like, I'm just not vibing with it. So then you put it down. I actually re-picked it up again, and it was Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. It follows Beth and Jennifer, who are work besties, and they're chit-chatting with each other through these work emails about their daily lives, etc., etc. And Lincoln, who is an internet security officer, where he is kind of just making sure that people's emails aren't saying any kind of weird bad words, yada yada yada, keeping up with HR compliances. And he follows Beth and Jennifer's emails, and he realizes that Beth is actually super funny and that he's kind of falling in love with her, even though it's someone he's never met before. They work in the same office, obviously, but he works in a different department and she works in another one. And oh my God, this book made me feel so many things. This is what I call like a slow burn. Like when I think of a slow burn and I think of pining and wanting, this is that book. There is nothing wrong with this book. I don't care what reviews say about this. I don't care what other people say about this book. I don't care if they think Lincoln's a loser, yada yada yada. I've read all the bad reviews, and I'm gonna stick by saying that this is a good book and I love Lincoln. Hello. Yeah, you can't make me hate him. I won't do it. I think that this was a perfect book, and I won't let you talk me out of it. I won't. 5 stars. On my next read is Legends and Lattes, and this book, if you are looking for a book for autumn time, like you're looking for that cozy read, this is the book. This is the absolute book for you. Like if you're looking for fun things to happen and to feel like all of the simple pleasures in life exist for a reason, like this is the book, you know? This is the book that made me want to learn how to make cinnamon rolls, which I did. It made me want to be at a coffee shop somewhere in the middle of nowhere and just hug all my friends really tightly. That is the vibes I got from this book. I did give it 5 stars. I have oh, I forgot the whole synopsis part. This book follows an orc who is finished with her, you know, trials and tribulations of fighting, and she's like, you know what, I'm gonna start a coffee shop in this place in a faraway land that doesn't know what coffee is. And yeah, you know, she is doing her thing. She is building a coffee shop. She is like acquiring things. It does play out kind of like if you were playing a video game and you have to like meet people, and then you have to like finish one skill, and then it leads to like another task, and then it goes to another task. But it's so rewarding, I think, the fact that it's written like that, because it makes you feel as though you are part of the game. So I very much enjoyed it. This is definitely a read that you would want to go and get like a pumpkin spice latte to. I don't know. I was having a blast, and that's all that matters, is that I was having a blast. The next book on my list was a shorter book, but I kind of figured since I was easing myself into reading again, I should probably read shorter novels to feel that sense of gratification of completing a book. So the next book I read, I think, was I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Paek Se-hee. I was so excited for it because if you know me, you know I love Korean food. And tteokbokki is one of those foods that I'm guilty of finishing a whole bowl by myself. I will add those eggs in there, and I'm eating the fish cakes too. But this follows her because it is actually a memoir, and so we follow her going to therapy as she figures out she has these issues like depression and stuff, and so it almost kind of reads like a journal entry between her and her therapist. I did not like this book at all. I hate to say it. I don't know if it was the translation. I don't know if it was I don't know. I just remembered being really annoyed the whole time with her and feeling as though like I just didn't like her. And I feel kind of bad because I do think this is a memoir. So I hope she doesn't watch this. I doubt she'll ever watch this, but if she does, I'm sorry. I hope therapy's going well for you. I gave it 2 stars. The next book on my list is Cult Classic by Sloane Crossley. Cult Classic is set in New York City, and it follows Lola, who is recently engaged. She goes out for a pack of cigarettes and just keeps bumping into her exes. And she doesn't think that this is a coinkydink, and we are following her as she finds out why it's not a coinkydink. I think that this book was written really well. It was written really well, but it just fell flat. The characters fell flat, the plot fell flat, and within the first quarter of the book, you think to yourself like, man, this is going somewhere really interesting. Like, this has to go somewhere really interesting. And it doesn't. It doesn't. The whole ending of the book, I couldn't tell you what happened. I just remembered being like it wasn't even the kind of reads where you're thinking to yourself like, wow, what just happened? That was so weird and eccentric and off-putting. This was more of like, why did any of this even have to happen? I want to say I also gave this 3 stars. I'm not opposed to reading more of Sloane Crossley's books. I do think that she wrote really well, and I was disappointed that she didn't move in further. There was a plot, or not a plot, but a thought in this book, probably within that quarter mark, where she brings up being a ghost and what it would be like to come back to life again and all the mundane things she would have done. I remember my best friend and I, we were talking about it, and we were thinking to ourselves like, that was like such a poetic piece of a paragraph, and I wish she had expanded further on it, or like made the book into that bit instead of where it led off to. The most popular book on this list is probably Icebreakers by Hannah Grace. And if you haven't been spoiled from TikTok about this book, spoiled, you know, for reading books, you would think I would be better at English. I am not. If TikTok has not spoiled this book for you, I will give you a brief synopsis. This book is a sport romance set in Maple Hills, California. I actually don't know if that's a real place, and I am from California. And it's two besties, 2 bros. They're not. They're lightly enemies in the beginning of this book. Anastasia, who is an ice skater, and she is hoping to make it to Team USA this year, so she's really on her grind, you know. She's very type A personality, and she's been practicing with her said partner. And then there's captain of the ice hockey team, which is Nate, and something happens. One of the rinks get melted because obviously they're super rich, this school, so they have 2 rinks. It gets melted, and now they have to share, and now they have to come together. Extremely smutty love story. Icebreakers, I think when I first read it, I actually really liked it a lot because it was super easy for me to read. It was probably one of the first books I started reading again, so it was just, I zipped through that really quickly. There was not a lot going on in terms of anything else besides the smut and like the end goal of what they were trying to get at, which was her making it to Team USA with all of her immense practices. And I didn't really think that the romance was a viable piece in this, but it was fun and it was easy and nothing really happens, but in like a good fun way, right? I think I gave this book 4 stars initially, but had to think back on it and was like, was it really 4 stars? Like, did you really like it? Come on. Like, I think I changed it back to 3 stars because then I remembered that Anastasia is this like goes to therapy girl a lot, but she's super rude to Nate in the beginning of this whole thing and really aggressive in like the first part of the book against Nate, which I kind of feel is unfair to him. I don't see why she's as aggressive as she is, and that irks me a lot. So there's that. I can barely remember this book, so that just goes to show you how much I liked it, if it does. Last but definitely not least, and this is Carrie Soto is Back. by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And my God, this book is definitely for tennis lovers. If you guys have ever played tennis, even if you've never played tennis before and you don't understand the nuances of this game, I still think that this book is a great read. It obviously follows Carrie Soto, who was once, you know, a big shot in her youth, and she's coming back to steal her titles from a newer, younger contestant. It sounds like such a boring plot, but this was such a fun read. Like, I felt as though I was there with her through her training practices and her trying to make it to all these different tournaments that she was in. And there is a light bit of romance, but I don't think it takes away from that. There's so many things that happen in this book that I loved, and I gave it 5 stars. This was beautifully written. Carrie Soto is back, has such a special place in my heart. I've cried reading this book. I laughed reading this book. You know, all the emotions. I did it while reading this book. 10 out of 10. 5 out of 5. That's pretty much it. That's all I have right now. I wish I had more. I will do this better next time, but I needed to just actually do it first. Okay, I'm super tired. I need to go grocery shopping or lay down or somewhere in between that. So